I would say that, a sad diet doesn't follow ecosystem dynamics. A paleo diet, as prescribed by a lot of weird gurus, doesn't follow ecosystem dynamics. Product-based veganism does not follow ecosystem dynamics. Greetings, friends. Homegrown Big here, coming at you again with another video while I have this very small gap in my schedule. And this video I've been meaning to get to for a little while because so many people have requested it. And that's, what are my feelings about plant-based versus veganism? How am I feeling plant-based versus vegan? Etc., etc. And I just want to say that if you look at YouTube videos, there are a shit ton of videos really bashing plant-based people. And I think to the ultimate detriment of the vegan community and the vegan movement. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And I have never in my life, even when I was a more stringent vegan, felt that the efforts of people consuming a plant-based diet was wrong. I thought, in fact, it was very helpful. So without further ado, I have some ideas that I've outlined and I want to talk about them. So for those of you just checking in, I've spent over 10 years of my life attempting various forms of veganism and am well educated in nutrition, in biology, human physiology in general. And over the last year, almost a year now, I have been plant-based. Due to health concerns, I moved into plant-based, and I am feeling perfect and awesome and great for the first time in a really long time. And to me, plant-based is the ideal style of eating for human physiology. I'm going to talk about animal rights a little bit later, but I'm going to start off with talking about plant-based from human physiology perspective. So first of all, in the ape family, which human are apes, there are no vegans. Veganism does not exist in the ape family. It only exists in the human family out of artifice. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that as long as people can maintain their health and their virility and so on and so on. But the reality is that there is a very strong revolving door in the vegan community despite people's really strong want for it. I mean, we're talking people who are even authors of very popular best-selling books on veganism ending up reverting back to animal products, sometimes as much as 7 years later. And I think this really points to our underlying physiology as the reason for this happening. And there's no vegan frugivores, and humans are designated as frugivores. That's our physiology. There is one bird. I did a long time of studying frugivorism when I was in university, and there's one type of bird, it's a hornbill, that's considered a pure frugivore. And even then, they're not considered pure frugivores because there's insects on fruit. So there's no outside of the artifice of humans, there's no vegan frugivores or vegan apes. So, but what we do see is very common in the ape family is a strong predilection for plant-based foods. And so heavy amounts of carbohydrates, heavy amounts of greens, with small amounts of animal products on the side, and that's including hunting and insects. And I think that really shows how our family of animals eats best. And if we look at our evolutionary past and where we are now, it's probably why we're having so many problems. We're just simply out of balance with our physiology. Even as we come up through agrarian society, we would see that the healthy, strong, robust people were largely plant-based. They tended to be the more poor people who were eating a lot of plants, a lot of starches, and a little bit of animal products on the side, and that's because they were poor and they couldn't afford it. Whereas if we look at history and some of the things that were written in medical history, we see things like gout and heart disease and stuff like this was called the disease of kings. And that's because they could have whatever they wanted, and their palates had a hardwiring for wanting of nutrient dense, calorically dense foods, and they ate a lot of animal products, a lot of cheeses, a lot of meats, and probably a lot of alcohol too. But we see that distinction and that separation. And I think it's just really obvious to me now at this point. I haven't always seen it with what I feel is clarity, that plant-based really aligns itself perfectly with human physiology. Your diet's saturated in plants, hopefully a lot of raw ones, hopefully a lot of fruit, and you take in what you need in only occasionally because it's too rich for the human body to take in a lot of it. It's not what we're designed for. We're designed for a lot of fruit, a lot of plants, and some starches and fungus and tubers, and a little bit of animal products around the side to make sure that we get enough B12, B vitamins, long chain fatty acids, and strong mineral density. So in alignment with that, moving from, I think that it reflects our true human physiology better, but moving into supplements. So I have and do advocate supplements to people as a stop loss mechanism. So that means that you take them to stop a downward spiral in your health, whether it's physiological or dental or what have you. It's something you do temporary until you get shit figured out. And if you're a vegan, you're always going to have to get some B12. And I know there's some people who say they don't, or they only do it intermittently, like they take it for a while and then they don't. But that's really messing with fire as far as I'm concerned. B12 is like critical. And so you're going to be reliant on supplementation for the rest of your life. I don't find that to be natural. There's people who say, well, I'm just going to get it off my dirty fruit or from my intestines, or I'm going to do oral sex or something like this. But this tends not to be at the levels that we need. And we see this over and over again. Key critical players in the vegan movement have all come out, not all of them, but a lot of them have come out and said that they have gotten blood work where their doctors told them their B12 was just way too low. That's dangerous. So then when you look at that, you're thinking supplementation, you're buying supplements in a plastic bottle, you're creating more packaging, or in the case of people who are taking shots, like how much medical waste are you creating? And then you think about that, if all of the billions of people on the planet were using that, maybe not as much as somebody who's a type 2 diabetic. That's a reasonable argument, but still, I just don't think that this is a sustainable approach to long-term diet and nutrition that is going to keep our species and our planet in the best health. So I haven't supplemented in almost a year, and I feel amazing now. I was supplementing on normally 3 things when I was a vegan: B12 or B complex, D, and then a K2 dental supplement. So, really having to take a lot to sort of try to keep a balance and just try to maintain homeostasis. Now I'm not doing that at all. I feel amazing. My teeth are good. They're getting stronger and stronger all the time this year. It took about 6 months before I felt like they were really turning a corner into better health. And it's nice not to have to remember to take a pill. I'm going to have to say that. And I just feel better about not having the packaging and the reliance on something that is a construct of artifice. And this leads me into it's just simply more sustainable. Um, that is my belief, that's my observation, and I see that. I see it not only as more sustainable on a person to person level, but also on a broader ecosystem scale. And on a person to person level, um, people can make plant based go for decades. Most people do not sustain veganism long term. There is a very, very high recidivism rate. And I did a video about that. And it can be from physiological, it can be from cultural, it could be from different reasons. It could be for financial, who knows. But there is a higher adherence rate in plant-based. And that's because it gives people options. I think on a physiological level, like I have been talking about, it just keeps people from downward spiraling into ditches, nutritional ditches, where people just don't feel good and start having conditions. The other aspect of that sustainability, and this is something that I've noticed for myself and in other vegans, is that there's you can be a really ecosystem driven vegan. So I'm not saying this as a ultimate statement, but as a generalization, people normally start with some type of veganism and then slowly start moving towards using products. So I've seen this over and over. Like somebody starts raw vegan or starts like raw till four, and they're just eating like starches and like fruit, and that's comes with its own packaging, but maybe you're buying in bulk, and that's really sustainable. And then little by little, they start sliding into vegan product land. And vegan product land is a packaging nightmare, and nobody is talking about the long-term effects of this. Everyone's saying it's better for the environment, but I will challenge that 100%. You're eating little, tiny portions of Beyond Meat burgers, two patties in this big thing of plastic and cardboard, and that's one meal for one person, or at least it would be for me. And you're eating that several times a week. That's not sustainable. But if you're plant-based, you have other options. You can like go to the farmer's market and get small amounts of pastured meats in butcher paper, which can be composted. You can get some, eggs that are in compostable cartons. None of that exists in veganism, although there's that one new butcher shop out in the Midwest, and that's a nice option for sure, and that'd be some place to be heading to. But like the Jardine, the field roast, the Beyond Meat, all of that is so packaged and carbon intensive. It's no good. So if you're eating a small amount of animal products to sustain your health and nutrition, you're not contributing to that ridiculous, 200 animals a year consumption that is really driving the environment to bad places, right? This is like a conscious choice. Like I understand the animal products and heavy reliance on animal products for my diet is not only not good for my health, I'm going to end up with the diseases of kings, but it's also not great for the environment. And the reason for that is that it steps out of ecosystem dynamics. And this is something that's not talked about in nutrition or diet at all. And when we follow ecosystem dynamics, we see our health is good, and we see that it reflects good ecosystem health as well. So if we look at ecosystem dynamics, we see that there's a lot of plants and a little bit of animals. And ecosystems can't sustain a large amount of big animals like cows. And when we look at, like somebody talks about a carnivore or whatever, there's not a lot of carnivores in ecosystems. They just don't, there's not. The ecosystems can't sustain a lot of carnivores, but they can sustain a lot of herbivores or a lot of omnivores or a lot of frugivores. So I think that that's a really clear distinction to make. And I would say that, a SAD diet doesn't follow ecosystem dynamics. A paleo diet, as prescribed by a lot of weird gurus, doesn't follow ecosystem dynamics. Product-based veganism does not follow ecosystem dynamics. And the same could be said for plant-based if somebody was eating a lot of products, but mostly people I know that are into plant-based are really into whole foods. And they're supported by whole foods and local agriculture. So that's my statement on that, and there can be a lot of arguments. Feel free to make comments down below. But this could be, an 80-minute video if I kept going. I think you get my points, and I want to move on into if it's more sustainable, can we actually save the lives of more animals? Now, the main primary point of veganism is that it's for the animals. But I will say this once and I'll say it again. If it's not good for the environment, it's not good for the animals, because it's not just farm animals that you're trying to protect. It's wild animals, and all of these products with the little plastic caps and the little plastic wrappers, that shit's ending up in the ocean. That stuff's just piling up all over the place. We can't be product focused vegans and think that we're doing it for the animals. That's bullshit, and I think that every single vegan manufacturer out there should come to terms with that and deal with it and offer up really true sustainable options for their products. The other thing is that if somebody can maintain plant-based for 50 years, like let's say I'm in my mid-40s right now and I plan on living another 50 years at least, and I want to get to my 90s, right? If I eat 5 animals a month, let's say, that's just kind of like a rough guess, so let's say I eat 5 chickens, right? And I eat 5 chickens a month for a year. That's 60 animals a year. And for 50 years, that's 3,000 animals that have died for my continued life. Okay, so 3,000 for 50 years. Hold on to that number. Now, let's say that I was a vegan for 5 years, or even let's say I was a vegan for 7 years. And I save 200 animals a year, because that's what PETA says is the average savings. That's 1,400 animals. But I end up with really horrid anemia and freak out and think veganism is the worst thing for humans and it's not a viable diet, and I revert back to eating paleo because that's the next healthiest diet that's not a SAD diet. And I go back to eating animals and fruits and vegetables. So if I did that for 50 years, after my 7 years of veganism, that would still equate to 8,600 animals. So by being and maintaining a more sustainable plant base versus the person that went hardcore vegan, freaked out, and went back to animals, you're talking about over 5,000 different, more than 5,000, more than 5,500 animal savings in a more sustainable diet. So my question is, and somebody's going to say, oh, that's terrible logic or whatever. No, this is really poignant logic, because we are so myopic as a species. We're so myopic that we will promote something in a plastic package because it's plant-based, overlooking at what the long-term effects of this are, not just for farm animals, but for ecosystems everywhere and for the longevity of our species and the species that we live with. So if we think about, like, if people are happier and more socially integrated and more sustained in a homeostatic nutritional wellness on plant-based, and understand that it's a portion issue, it's a percentage issue, it's a what should be predominating our plates issue, I firmly believe that this is ultimately going to save way more animals' lives, and it's going to be way better for the environment, and it's going to be better for humans. So to wrap this all up, I feel that this is plant-based so much more sustainable for me, not only in my health and working with my permaculture setup here, but so much more sustainable for me on a social level, an ecological level, just feeling less stressed in general, on a societal level, and in a biological level for sure, for me as a scientist, and looking at it and going, yeah, this makes sense. This really reflects our evolutionary past. It's not contrived. It's a very natural, beneficial way to eat. And I feel great on it. And I think that this is a tough conversation for the vegan community that really needs to be had. I'm saying that from a perspective as a friend and an ally, and as somebody who really tried hard to make veganism stick and to encourage others in it. That I feel that the potential for plant-based is so much larger than veganism, and I think the vegan community is in kind of dire straits right now. I mean, besides the social media circus, there just aren't a lot of people who stick it and stick it long term. And there has to be an acknowledgement of that. And if you're a vegan who's kicking ass, awesome, stick with it. But why are you going to try to beat down others who aren't you? You know, and I really think that the lion's share of humans should just be like funneled into plant-based. And if somebody gets inspired to try to go all the way vegan, cool. But it shouldn't be looked down upon, not in my opinion. And that was never my opinion, even when I was a more stringent vegan. I think that we have to have a greater understanding of our fellow humans than that. So, if you made it this far, give me a thumbs up. You're awesome. We'll talk to you next time.